a tribute to former Governor Jim Tucker podcast. I would like to go back and kind of review a podcast I did with him a few months ago, and probably one of his last complete interviews in the sense of talking to someone. There's quite a few things that are of interest in this. Is that in the early stage, I wanted to show that he had called me on FaceTime and called my number. So he repeatedly talks about, do I still have the same number that I had when I was in Harrison after moving down to Little Rock? And then he talks about a restaurant that he had met me and my daughter at last year, Copper Grill, or down close to where he lives. So I wanted to include that in there because it shows the treatment he was doing as far as getting food into his body, and then follow that with our trip to the, we ended up at the Capitol Hotel and had a conversation there. But in advance of getting into that, I wanted to show you a little bit of a history I captured. It talks about the Riyadis and the Indonesia connection to Little Rock and Jackson Stevens and Stevens. But, that was through Clinton as a governor and later on as president. And there was a connection there that I always kind of wondered about because when Jim Guy got involved he was involved in cable before he got to be governor. But he had an opportunity to go to Indonesia. And his wife, Betty, was really more of the business person as far as the cable. But I had met with her, and we had talked about their product at the governor's mansion on the kitchen table. And it was kind of an interesting meeting. Jim Guy wasn't involved at that time as far as looking at the system and what we did in the customer care and why people are using it. And it had been selected by a lot of major companies internationally because we had gone to a platform that was on an open system, and the design was such that it was connected to a lot of other products that could come in from Microsoft. So we had really kind of thought it out. We didn't want to be a closed system and do a lot of other things. And there's some connection there with the Hangzhou, as far as artificial intelligence. But I think one of the things that's intriguing about this is our upcoming event on March the 4th here in Little Rock. And it's kind of developing into a much bigger thing than it probably started out to be. But we're going to have a session, or some of the sessions are going to be at ULR at their tech center. Reasons for that, we're going to be more general in nature, but we're going to talk about ethics, and we're going to talk about the technology, and we're going to talk about whether or not you can invest in that and what to look for, and have what's considered the experts in the business, one's from out in California, and others will be from the different offices in the States, but there'll be a couple people from Argentina. But it's a really a great partnership that they have, and we're extremely lucky to have them here in Little Rock. But if you look very deeply on this, there's some other things that are funny that are connected here. He even talks about the Riyadis having a bank down in Mina, and we know that the things that went on during the Reagan administration is whatever drugs and guns and everything else that was going between Mina and Central America. And my brother was a fixed base operator, and undoubtedly he had pilots that were probably working in that situation that you've heard about. But the other connection is my son graduated from Duke Law, and believe it or not, Ken Starr, the prosecutor of the Clintons on Whitewater, was the main speaker, and I got to talk to him one-on-one about my son later on joining, or I was an intern and was going to go to work full-time for the Rose firm, and he stayed there for several years. So that's another connection, and then you start looking at the group from Rose that were involved in the FSLIC and shutdown, and you can talk about Hillary or Webb Hubbell or their other partner that committed suicide. They were involved in Harrison, and I had a situation there with a loan because I had a computer that we had bought from them. And it was something that even though I was current, I had to pay it all off just because of a balloon note. And so the story goes on, but I wanted to show that maybe for some of the people that my concern back in the 80s was much more with the Clintons than maybe it is today with the Bushes today. I know that I get the name calling from the people that are wanting to make America great again. I don't think that's happening. But I had even a worse situation with, I guess, the Clintons and Democrats. So that's all documented in other stories I've told, but most people don't take the time to look at that. They just see something current and they're kind of trolling my comments, and they're completely off base. But I think this interview is really good. It shows early on that he has some really bad short-term memories. He had called me on FaceTime. I never called him on FaceTime. And Jim Guy was there being ministered to on his stomach and his feeder. And then later on, he got talking about a restaurant that we had been to the previous year, like we'd never been there before. So, but then he had a great memory of events that happened over the years. And he could recall things and details that I probably couldn't recall on that. So you get an idea of how the Parkinsons are impacted, but you also get to see how Alzheimer's, because Betty now has, his wife now has Parkinson's. So I thought I'd kind of recap that and then get into the tribute, because he is really a good friend of John Paul Hammersmith, who's a Republican out of 3rd District, but something you might not know in the days we're in today, that Republicans and Democrats could work for the good of the country. And that's where I'm coming from, is finding the truth, whichever way it goes, Democrat or Republican. I'm not going to side with one person or other just because they are of a certain political conviction.
The Indonesian family forged Arkansas links more than a decade ago by Susan Schmidt and Michael Weisskopf. Washington Post staff writers. Sunday, October 20th, 1996, page of 27. The billionaire Rowdy family of Indonesia got its first toehold in American industry through Bill Clinton's Arkansas more than a decade ago, forging links into the state's insular business and legal circles that still serve them today. It was the strangest of beginnings in America, one that is still spinning off odd and intriguing relationships. Some in the cast of characters had been bit players before in controversies that have engulfed the Clintons ever since they left Little Rock 4 years ago. The Riddies were already owners of a vast Asian conglomerate when they first started doing business in Arkansas in 1983. They got help from, of all places, the U.S. government, which provided $2 million to the Riddies company that would in turn be lent to minority businesses. After that not-so-humble start more than a decade ago, the Rowdy family's Lippo Group in Jakarta is engaged in dealings with Arkansas industrial giants such as Walmart and Tyson Foods, and has multiple lines into the Clinton administration, not the least of which is James Rowdy's personal relationship to the president. A closer look into Rowdy's past, gleaned from interviews, bank records, government documents, and other sources, shows how far the tentacles of this Indonesian family reached and provides a window into how his long relationship with Clinton took hold. The Riddies were introduced to Arkansas through Little Rock billionaire Jackson T. Stevens, whose investment banking firm is the largest in the country outside New York. Stevens got to know Rowdy in 1977 when Lippo was weighing whether to buy Burt Lance's financial interest in the National Bank of Georgia. Lance at the time was budget director to President Jimmy Carter, a Stevens official said, demonstrating an interest even then by the Indonesians in political connections as well as financial. The The company was then looking for a U.S. bank to help finance its export deals, although the Georgia sale fell through. Stevens officials struck up a relationship with family patriarch Mokhtar Riyadi and invited his son James to Little Rock to learn about international banking. Thus began Lippo's improbable immersion into the clubby, virtually all-white world of Arkansas politics and finance that few outsiders, much less foreign nationals, had learned to penetrate. James Rowdy assimilated into Little Rock society, buying a comfortable home in an area called Pleasant Valley and joining a country club where he could socialize with others in Little Rock's corporate gentry. Fluent in English and gregarious, he and his wife, Aylin, hosted frequent dinner parties, and like most of the state's wealthiest business owners, they got to know Arkansas's young governor and his wife, whose Rose law firm did legal work for the state's corporate elite, including, now, the Radys. Their first Arkansas venture was Mokhtar Rowdy's creation of Lippo Finance and Investment, Inc., a lending company financed in part by the Small Business Administration and formed to make loans to small, minority-owned businesses. As a foreign national, Mokhtar Rowdy was unable to serve as chairman to a company whose very existence was owed to the U.S. government's SBA program. So Rowdy hired Carter's recently departed SBA administrator, Vernon Weaver, for the job instead. Weaver listed then-Governor Bill Clinton as a character reference in his application to the SBA, according to government sources who have examined the company records. Weaver is now Clinton's U.S. representative to the European Union. The company made loans to Asian businesses located in Little Rock, Los Angeles, and New York. In 1984, Lippo and Stevens joined forces to buy a 30% stake in Worthen Bancorp, Arkansas's largest financial institution, with ambitions to develop international business. Worthen took over the SBA company, but surrendered its SBA license in 1987. Republican sources said committees in the House and Senate have asked the SBA to immediately turn over all Lippo's company records, including details about the government-backed loans it financed. In the course of its Arkansas dealings with Worthen, the Reedys ended up joint owners of the First National Bank in Mena, a remote mountain hamlet known for nothing if not international intrigue. An airstrip at Mena is at the center of long-standing but unproven allegations that it was used for running guns to the Contras in Nicaragua. One of Worthen's stockholders during this period was lawyer Joseph Giroir, who was then managing partner at the Rose law firm with Hillary Clinton, Webster L. Hubbell, and Vincent Foster. Giroir left Rose in the late 1980s but has maintained ties to the Reedys. Just a day after James Reedy visited Clinton in the White House in April 1993, Giroir set up a company intended to create partnership ventures with Lippo. The following year, he was able to capitalize on the U.S. decision to renew China's most favored nation trading status. Since then, Giroir has publicly discussed his efforts to broker ventures between Lippo and Tyson Foods, which has been trying to increase its chicken exports to the Far East. Tyson and Walmart, which already has a store in a Lippo-owned complex in Indonesia, have pressed for and won Clinton administration backing for a controversial new airport near their headquarters in northern Arkansas that they hope could become a cargo gateway to Asia. With the help of White House advisor Thomas F. McClarty, Tyson and Walmart last year got the Federal Aviation Administration to provide $21 million in initial funding for the project, whose price may ultimately run into the hundreds of millions. Giroir is also involved in a cable television venture with Lippo. In January 1994, he and Betty Tucker, wife of then Arkansas Governor Jim Guy Tucker, traveled to Jakarta with Giroir to study the possibility of investing in a cable franchise with Lippo. The Tuckers formerly owned a cable television franchise that for years turned handsome profits, but that later came to haunt them. Jim Tucker, who resigned his office this summer after a conviction in a Whitewater-related fraud case, faces a second trial arising from his cable dealings. Several players in that drama turn up in the new controversy surrounding Lippo. Tucker's former lawyer, John Haley, a co-defendant in the cable case, is divorced from Maria Haley, a Clinton appointee to the Export-Import Bank. Haley's longtime law partner, Mark Grabauer, is a golfing buddy of President Clinton's who attended an Oval Office meeting with Reddy and passed out business cards presenting himself as White House liaison to Reddy, executives in Jakarta. But perhaps the most interesting player is Hubbell, the one-time Associate Attorney General now in jail for defrauding the Rose law firm and its clients. He has refused to tell Congress why Lippo paid him a large but undetermined amount of money after he left the Justice Department. He flatly rejected the contention posed bluntly by Whitewater Republicans that Lippo was in effect paying him to keep quiet in the Whitewater investigation as a favor to Clinton. Copyright 1996, The Washington Post.
Okay, the following is a clip from where Jim Guy had called me on FaceTime. We rarely talk on FaceTime. We have emails, and we had conversation on iPhone. So I want to show this because of the duplication of some of his thoughts and things that went on in this conversation. And then I'll go into the meeting we had at the Capitol Hotel.
Check on a couple of things with my wife and timing. For example, I've got a meeting this afternoon up on, I live in a high-rise condo here.
Yeah.
I'm on the 14th floor, but there's a 20th floor that is up there. folks can just sit on it and gaze at the town and chat with folks they know or don't know.
Right.
And that's kind of a pleasant thing to do. But we could sit down up there,
Okay.
or I can meet you at Studies Institute. I have never gone over to ASI just for a meeting without any other arrangement on it. When I've gone over there to work on my papers, there's a room where they've got boxes and they've got the employees that are working on laying out what they found in each box and where they go, and they ask me questions about them. So, but at any rate, if you'd like to get together tomorrow, I think it's a nice thing you're doing, and I enjoy sitting down and visiting with you. The easiest place, if it's open for breakfast, is a place called the Copper Rail, I'm sorry, which is catty-cornered from my building. And I used to go over there all the time to eat dinner. Betty likes to fix dinner at home, so I don't get over there as often. But their lunch and dinners, I think, are quite good, and they may have a good breakfast. I'll go over there and check just in case. If they do, we might go over and have do you drink coffee?
Oh yeah, I don't have a problem with coffee. Yeah.
Well, I've never been a coffee drinker until this year. They bought me one of those little coffee makers at Keurig, K-U-R-I-G.
Yeah, I like those.
Oh, I like it a lot, and I make it with I put a little milk. In my case, I use not cow's milk, but oat milk. And I warm it up just a little bit and then twirl it in that Keurig. Twirl it. And I make me now, darn it, it's my Tucker latte.
Oh, that's great. Can't beat that. No, that sounds good. No, I understand what you're saying there. Yeah, I do that too. I mean, I like that Keurig. Works well.
Yeah, it tastes good to me, and I try to fix up something to eat. But at any rate, what I understand now is you're living here in Little Rock.
Right.
Just having moved in, and that you might be available for breakfast tomorrow. Do you have the same telephone you had up in?
Yeah, I know. It's the same one that you called me on right now. I haven't changed on that. And no, I can do it. Whatever. I could pick up something and bring it up to that floor if you'd like. I was just thinking of coming down early because of the meeting I had at 9 o'clock over there at the library, which is really close there. I got them to send me the address, and I want to confirm that that's where it is, and it is right there, real close to where you are. So.
And that's for tomorrow, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, I'll have to check with Betty on whether I've got a conflict on that or not, but we've got one of my daughters from Washington, D.C., and three of her children, our grandchildren, have driven in 2 nights ago, and we've had them in and out and spending the night. Have the older grandkids spending the night with us. These are not little tiny children.
How old is she? The one spending
our daughter?
Yeah, the spending the night though. The one spending the night, the granddaughter.
Well, our daughter, Anna, is our daughter, and she's teaching at colleges and stuff. She's a Chinese expert.
And
so she gets hired by TV stations and by big colleges. They fly her off to China, and she makes presentations over in China. So she's very, very smart and is not affected by any of this. Has a wonderfully cute little 10-year-old daughter that also dances ballet. I love that. And then these two young men, both I think they've both found jobs here in Little Rock now.
Great.
So they'll be able to help take care of her just as an older woman. She doesn't have any health problems, and I think they'll be able to help take care of us as well in many situations, depending on how things go. I've not had a real problem with my Alzheimer's, but I certainly don't articulate as well as I used to, or shut up as well as I used to. So I'll see how that goes. Betty struggles with her Parkinson's.
Okay.
But so that's very frustrating to her. But it's not something that haunts her every minute of the day. So, but at any rate, let me check on this, and maybe I can meet you over there at the Studies Institute. And if not, maybe we can get together and have a cup of coffee. I don't know how their coffee is at Copper Rail, but I can sit down with you, and they'll have something for breakfast, so hopefully a poached egg or something of that nature. So I'll call that, and if I've got your old phone number, I'll give you a holler and stay, and we can figure out where to sit down.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds good. Yeah, you just call me on the number, so it'll be that number you can get me at. So no problem.
Good deal. Thanks a bunch, Herb.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, I captured part of the FaceTime call on my iPad. I just had to flip it around and got that, and it was kind of a way to illustrate some of the issues that people with Alzheimer's have. They can be really sharp on certain facts and information, and some of the easier and simpler things, maybe the phone number, which I was just called on.
Recently, prior to our daughter and myself attendance of the Blake Shelton Back to the Honky Tonk Tour at Simmons Bank Arena in North Little Rock, Arkansas, we were greeted by former Arkansas Governor Jim Guy Tucker at the nearby Posh Copper Grill restaurant. For us, it was less than $50 for food, non-alcoholic drinks, and desserts for over 2.5 hours. As Razorback fans, we were able to watch the NCAA tournament game between Arkansas and Illinois prior to the concert. Jim Guy had arranged the best seats in the bar to watch it. He stayed to welcome us and talk prior to game time. He personally greeted my daughter at the door when we arrived. I was surprised by his frail condition, but not his willingness to be there to greet us.
At times he calls it something else, and then talks about breakfast, which I think most knew that they had no breakfast, and that was something he kind of got back to. And then he also talked about another location. As you'll find out, we did end up going to the Capitol Hotel after we had tried a location that did not serve some of the food he wanted to have for breakfast, and he's kind of limited on what he can have. And so we decided to go over there, which was not a bad decision, because we could do a podcast from there. It's nice to do remote podcasts. I've done that with a Barnes & Noble, and I've done it from the library up in Clinton, Arkansas, and other locations. So that was something we wanted to do anyway. Catch a little noise background, but that's fine. That's just part of the nature of the podcast. This is from August 2023.
Walmart's been one of our blessings for the state. They've used their money to do a lot of technical advancement in areas for the state, and I know there's continuing to spread up in North Arkansas.
Yeah, and Harrison was a second store they put in, and the irony of all of that was Sam Walton. I think I did a lot of research on this, and I did actually some things through some of the AI stuff that I have, and he was pretty close to moving things to Harrison at one point. He did a handshake deal with the Jonas over here to do the deal, and I don't know that he could have done a deal anywhere else when he started his second store. And the model for Harrison is the one that's probably been used more than any other because it serves a geographic territory at that time before Branson is about a 70-mile radius and a lot of stores here at that time. So I think that's one of the things that I picked up on. And I know one of the things I wanted to kind of visit with you today was how strong a relationship, as a representative, as a Democrat maybe, and John Paul Hammersmith as a Republican, how close that relationship had developed. And
Our meeting at the Copper Grill a year or so ago, Jim didn't look that great at that time.
after a false start at a breakfast place near the governor's mansion, we decided on the Capitol with an A.
Funny story, we had coffee in styrofoam cups from the previous place, and I said, Jim Guy, why don't you carry my styrofoam cup in here? I thought we would not be able to carry any thing from the outside in there, and we got by with it. I don't know, he was pretty much recognized as...
I think what's interesting is that this idea of these grand old Southern hotels that come from a very old tradition really sort of are a dying breed, aren't they?
There's two principal reasons for that. The first one is that a hotel was designed completely differently. So you didn't have what we now think of back of the house. You didn't have corridors and things for delivery. You might have had one room for a ballroom for social events. There was no such thing as a meeting. So it's very difficult to convert that footprint. So very few people, considering the return on it, are willing to make that sort of investment. Most of the great hotels, going back when I first started in the business, there was sort of an altruistic subchapter to the decision to do the restoration. I mean, all the hotels in San Francisco. Or, that could also be a little breastfeeding, where you took all the top railroad people and each one built one of the hotels going up Nob Hill.
They brought the best in to handle it. David Kleinberg did the interior design, and I remember in the throes of the restoration, very similar to what you were saying about the heat and air system. I think it was Warren who said, I think we should just change out all the windows. All the windows.
Oh, I remember that day. What happens is, and see, that's a curious thing about an older property. As you know, better than most people, you've got two halves to a window, have an exterior and an interior.
Jim Guy and I had something in common. We had two paper cups of coffee that we had gotten in our failed attempt to have breakfast earlier, and I'm glad that failed because this was very enjoyable.
Quite an ordeal.
Okay, this is their area of seating preference, and this is where we ate breakfast from.
I think we're just going to get started. We're just going to freewheel here. So it's Herb Blair and Governor Jim Guy Tucker, and we're doing a podcast from the Capitol Hotel. How are you today, Jim?
Better than I deserve, fortunately.
That's the way we always are. I was amazed when I talked to you yesterday. I don't know. We don't usually have the video on there, but I noticed you were doing a feeding tube. What do you have to do now? I know you have Alzheimer's and you have some other. What are a list of things that you're doing now?
Well, I don't know that it's a big list. All of us take some pills or something, but I take a number of pills. I've had since I was in college and in the Marine Corps, a bunch of intestinal problems and surgery. I had a liver transplant Christmas Day of 1992 from an 18-year-old boy who was killed on Christmas Eve in a snowmobile accident. He had gotten his driver's license the day before and had signed the back.
Primary reason for the camera angle was because of privacy issues. We wanted to avoid other people in
That
the
18-year-old boy signed the back of his license to authorize donation of his organs. I was able to get a liver on Christmas Day of 1992 up at Mayo Clinic. So I'm doing pretty well. I'm doing very well. I've got an organ that works now that didn't for many, many years. And I got home from Vietnam several times. I was in Vietnam in 3 separate years. I beat Marine Sergeant when I was in training to the top of the Hill 327 in the northern part of South Vietnam. And my wife and I have lived and worked all over the world. We built cable television systems in a lot of areas of the United States, Texas and Florida, and Arkansas and elsewhere. But we also built them abroad in Great Britain and France and parts of other countries. And they all turned out to be profitable enterprises, relatively simple things to do. But that also gave us the opportunity to travel very widely. We ended up, for example, in Berlin on the day the Berlin Wall was knocked down. We had been in London, and saw the newspaper where it said that they thought that was what was going to happen. And we jumped on a plane, a commercial airliner, and flew over to Berlin, got out, dropped our bags at the hotel, went to the wall, and this side of the wall, the free world side of the wall.
Now, what year was that? What year did that happen?
That was 1989, I believe it was. And all the sights that we saw that night, it was rainy and wet, and the newspaper stand, for example, the news with free world information, had been totally picked clean. It looked like it was clean and ready to eat.
Yeah.
Chicken would understand. And there was a couple that had a baby in a little baby cart.
Wow.
And they were pushing it back and forth across an electric eye door. They apparently had never seen such a thing where they were living in Berlin.
Yeah.
And then there was the wall itself. And there were a whole bunch of young people down on the base of the western side of the wall. And they had sledgehammers, and they were hammering away at the wall. So I went down, got a sledgehammer, and started knocking chunks out of the Berlin Wall.
Wow.
And I got them, sent them to all our children and to a few friends. And we were very proud of them. To be there after all those years of reading about the Berlin Wall and see what was actually happening was just a magnificent experience.
I think that what I thought about was crazy in the 1990s, and I kind of viewed it from a little different direction. That it was kind of the golden years, I guess, of cable TV going out, maybe the gilded age of since all the things that happened in the 1990s. I mean, we were sitting in a good position because we got a product on a PC or desktop, and everybody else in the cable business were mainframe, and they weren't equipped to go internationally. So we did a lot of things with companies that were startups, but they were funded by large U.S. companies, Time Warner, and we did some work with UIH, which is the predecessor to Liberty Global, so we got involved with that, and we took off, and I traveled all over the world and got over into Indonesia and Jakarta with Dwight Harlan. The funny part about this story was that I did a demo, and my friend Ed at that time was working with us, and we did it on the kitchen table for Betty, and Dwight was there, and I that was, I don't know, when that was starting up over there, and I know that was before you were still governor, but you'd been in the cable for many years. That had been a business you'd been in for several years, but we spent a lot of time, and I think you met my friend Sid Shreve. He came out one time from Phoenix. Do you remember Sid, or is that somebody?
I don't remember.
I was going to say when we talked about that, because he flew out, but he had a lot of things I talked about because of the fact that he had grown up there with his mom, and we traveled a lot over South America, but that was a cultural thing that he knew. He knew that the culture in Argentina was in your face and smash mouth, and you went over to Brazil and it was more genteel and more, a different atmosphere. So you had to know that cultural difference when you went in to do a presentation. And when I did presentations in some countries, it's like in the U.S. starting out, because cable started in rural areas, and the owner was having to make a fast decision. So you were there with a decision maker, and you had to answer questions and do it that way. And that was a little bit like Argentina, but in Time Warner's case, you had to go up the ladder, and they had to do all the other things. So it's kind of funny how our paths had crossed there, and I know it as a governor. Now, when did you have your your transplant on your liver relative when you were governor? I know that was after you left as governor, didn't you?
On Christmas Day of 1992, I had my liver transplant. It came from an 18-year-old boy who was killed on Christmas Eve in a snowmobile accident. So that's what his family was dealing with when at dawn that morning of Christmas, I got the gift of an 18-year-old boy's liver. I was able to get it because, as in Arkansas, I think still, on the back of your driver's license when you're getting a license, there's the opportunity to sign a little gift where you authorize the use of your organs if you're dead or dying to be given to another party. Mm-hmm. So I'm alive today, as I said here with you, with a wonderful liver that works for me.
Well, that's great.
Does not impede me in any way except I can't drink Budweiser beer anymore.
Yeah, it's a difference. Being in the military, I'm sure that was part of the drink there, I guess. So that was after, so you had been a representative. We talked about that last year, about your connection there with John Paul Hammersmith from Harrison, and how that had been a really good influence. And then later on, you were governor, I guess, for a few years, and then after that, you've been into the cable, and you've been into a lot of other businesses here in Little Rock.
Most of our cable business substantively had been before I was governor, and it had been, it was a relatively simple process. Mm-hmm. You just had to have the capital to be able to hire the people that needed to understand the tiny, important things in the cable. Yeah. And in terms of other countries, we were the same way. We went to Argentina also. Yeah. And Buddy Benefield and I flew down there together. We got a little system established there. But anyway, I won't run through all of them. But South America, Europe, the Middle East.
I've been to Kuwait City and did some things there. So
we built the greater part of Jaboka Dak, which is Greater Jakarta, and my team members who were there from the United States, overseeing the construction and so forth, worked with the local folks, understood that this was politics. Yeah, they made friends with them and ended up building all these places. And the only fight we had was the village chieftains. Now, these are urban villages. You're right in the middle of a great big city, but they controlled a number of city blocks in an area. We would give them cable TV, and their constituents wanted to see it too, so we had to put it out in an open area and protected and work with the chief on it. It was interesting to see the cultures.
And the villages out there, that they brought in a lot of international shopping things too. I mean, some of those cities were really interesting. I know I did make a visit out there, and it was quite different. Of course, the traffic in
downtown Jakarta was crazy, but everything else was, you could get out in these communities and it was quite a bit different too. So it was a little different lifestyle out there for sure.
We had Indonesia would not have been unique in this respect, but it was one of the selling points that worked was one of the major investors in our company was a very strong Christian. And he went to church on Sundays, but he and his family and his father's family, other family members.
Well, the Muslim, they have one of the largest percentage of Muslims,
that's right. So they're working in a tough territory.
Yeah, it was kind of. I remember
particularly in these little urban villages, which are nothing but a 10 square block area or something like that, depending on which one it was. But this is not something out in the woods. This is right in the middle of a city.
I know that James Riyadi he came to Little Rock. He was in the banking, wasn't he?
Yes, and ultimately he went back to Jakarta, and there's a long story that I'm not familiar with, but he went back. He still visits occasionally in the United States.
His dad was Mokhtar. Is he still alive?
He was still alive. His father was still alive the last time I talked with him.
Yeah, I hear you're getting pretty old at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyway.
Intriguing issue here, and one of the reasons I'm interested in the Tucker Library is there's a lot of conflict there. It appears that although money was, lended from the Lippo Group, which is James Riyadi and Mokhtar Riyadi, and their headquarters at that time was in Hong Kong. You flew right by it when you landed at the downtown Hong Kong airport before they built their nice new one. What involvement there in what came about, because the Clintons are pretty famous for throwing people under the bus to protect their interest, and I found the Tuckers to be very honest in their business dealings, at least with me, and what I observed. So I'm just trying to kind of clear my mind on that. I know that some people have gone past that, but it's something that's going to linger on, and maybe the library will throw some additional information here, because the media made more of a diversionary thing of their involvement with the Riyadis maybe, and maybe there was not much involvement with them directly, just from the standpoint of a business loan, and they worked mainly with other people there in Indonesia. And so just being an observer and being there at the time and develop a relationship with Jim Guy, I just wanted to see if I can get clarification on that.
Running those Christian Sunday broadcast in the middle of a Muslim village to the Muslim chieftain was a touchy proposition, but there was an audience for it. There was curiosity that drove part of it, wanting to see what really was taught in a Christian church.
Yeah, it was.
And then, over time, there was an attachment to it. They liked what they were hearing. So I felt very, very good about that, very good about business.
Yeah, well, that was. I know you built a lot of interesting content. I remember some of the things you were trying to put out there, and it really pretty much advanced a lot before a lot of things here, and a lot of things toward the children and other things that you did. I was pretty amazed at some of the contents that you had. A little bit of a side story. I had a guy that went over there and did some development named Jamie McIntyre, and he ended up marrying someone over there. Come back, and now he works in the States, but he was one of a good, you have those people that are, I guess, the creators, the software developers, and
And so that was an interesting story that came out of our connection because we had people over there for some time. But, another person I was just, do you remember any contact we had with Paul Case from Denver? Do you remember that name? I'm kind of checking you out a little bit on your Alzheimer's, but also just to see, he was the guy that helped me with the stuff at UIH and Liberty Global. But I remember we had some contact with him. I don't know if you even remember the name, but I just wanted to throw it out there at this time to see if you do.
I don't remember much about that.
Yeah, okay. I could probably jog your memory with some other details, but you run into so many people, it wouldn't necessarily be Alzheimer's. Just the fact that I know people throw out names to me, I would probably be about the same way because there's so many people, and even in a place that I grew up in Harrison, I run across, I'll see a face and I don't remember a name sometimes. It's just it's kind of the way it is anymore because things have changed quite a bit. But I know that we're going to head over here in a few minutes to the library, and I know they've got some of your 800 boxes, and so we're going to just spend a little time looking at that. Is there anything in particular that you're trying to do as far as getting that information that people can? I know there's ways that you can do searches, but to make it easy for people to see, is there anything you can do for that you can think of at this time to improve that? Is that something you can't do?
I sympathize with whoever's going to have to go through these boxes, but I literally cannot take the time to separate all of these papers over the years into an appropriate either subject matter or date arrangement. So,
well, I was wondering if how those things are done. Is that something for your volunteers, or is that something they handle?
I don't know how they're handling it.
Okay, well, we'll talk to them when we get over there. I think I'll just close it off here, and we'll kind of end up our breakfast. We had a great breakfast here in downtown Little Rock. I hadn't been to the Gap Hotel for a while, but it was kind of an interesting time and I'm sure you've been here several times in the past because it's kind of a popular place, as you can see, for business people, and we're right across the street from Stevens, so I'm sure they have people in and out here too. So we'll end it at that, and we'll talk a little bit later.
That's great. Thank you, my friend.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'll get you back there where you won't have to. We'll get it later.
Yeah, get that all.
Yeah, I don't know. Those things weren't pretty good times.
No, there's my.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I saw that. How that. Yeah, it's kind of.
They put a funnel over this that
I saw them pumping it down.
ties into the top.
Well, it was kind of, as I said, we don't usually do a video, a phone, but you just happened to dial me that way yesterday, and when we were on there,
they just pour it in.
Yeah.
They don't pour it in; they inject it in.
Well, I thought Jim Guy looked better physically, and his movements were better than I had seen in the past couple of times, over the last year, maybe a year and a half. But I think some of his, I think the things with Alzheimer's is starting to take a little toll on some of the short-term memory. I think he was able to handle that for the most part, but it was a little more repetitive things, and maybe not realizing that we had already talked about certain things, and he had, we had been to the Copper Grill and met there before, so there was a lot of duplication there unnecessarily, and of course he had my phone number, and he had called me on that number, and we talked about that a few times. So, but for the overall picture, I thought his health and his color of his skin and the way he handled himself, movement, was very good. Of course, my movements are not very good because I have to use a walker many times or a cane, depending on how much distance I'm going. I did make it to the library, and as you can see, it's pretty much a closed-off area. You have to go through certain things to get there, and then if you need to use the restroom, you have a badge, and so you have to check out, and kind of a top security and
what you can do and not do. You can take pictures, but then again, they don't want you, changing anything or writing on anything. So they really don't want you doing anything as far as anything that would change any documents or anything that you write with. But having an iPhone, I took a shot of a few things, and of course this letter here was one of the things that he was very helpful in.